somewhat afterward. Let me look at the date that he wrote. In 1958, the Bollingen Foundation published Answer to Jung. And what Dr. Jung was talking about was the fact that not only is the psyche real, but he was also talking about what religion is. I've always been trying to get a handle on certain issues about what God is, and that includes my activity as an American Presbyterian. And Dr. Jung answered that question for me because he said that what most people overlook or seem unable to understand is the fact that I regard the psyche as real. They believe only in physical facts and must consequently come to the conclusion that either the uranium itself or the laboratory equipment created the atom bomb. That is no less absurd than the assumption that a non-real psyche is responsible for it. God is an obvious psychic and non-physical fact, i.e., a fact that can be established psychically but not physically. So what he was saying as a psychiatrist and psychologist is that God is really in our minds, and it can't be proven in the physical world. It doesn't exist here in the physical world. And let me go on with the passage. This is from paragraphs 751 and 752 of Answer to Jung. The material evidence for the existence of this psychic phenomenon, God, is more than sufficient. It does not matter at all that a physically impossible fact is asserted, because all religious assertions are physical impossibilities. If they were not so, they would, as I said earlier, necessarily be treated in the textbooks of natural science. But religious statements, without exception, have to do with the reality of the psyche and not with the reality of the physis, which means the physical world. So what he's saying is, atheists often bring up the issue of whether a virgin birth is possible. And his point is that it's not an issue for the physical world and what happens in the physical world, because if you can imagine it, then that exists, and it exists in the psychic world, not in the physical world. And much of our problem in our world today, and indeed since the beginning of all religions, is that we keep wanting to bring religious facts, psychic facts, into the physical world. We have to live in our physical world, and it is not true that any one religion is the correct religion. All religions were created by God. If you accept the idea of God at all, you have to say that God created everything. And if God created everything, then he created all manner of religions. One of my friends says that there are now 20,000 religions in only the Protestant Christianity. I don't know if that's true. I know of 15 or so, perhaps, that are large enough to have a broad basis in the United States. But the reality is that every person that comes along who wants to say something about religion creates his own religion. And yes, that's a manifestation of that person's psyche, but it is not necessarily a manifestation of my psyche. Is it a manifestation of your psyche? I don't know. But it doesn't mean that we should kill one another over it, that's for sure. And so that is the point, that our problem, and if we listen to the Republican debates, for example, we think that, or some fundamentalist Christians think that the Bible is literally true, and most of the Bible could not possibly be shown in the physical world. And yet it is psychically true, but that doesn't mean that a Jew or a Muslim or a Hindu or a Jain has to exactly understand religion or God the way Christians do. They can have their psychic facts as well. And it's ironic that most of these religions have parallels to one another. And so the issue that we are facing in the world is that too many people want to bring an idea that's a psychic fact into the physical world and manifest it in the physical world where it's not appropriate, where we live with 1.4 billion Muslims, 1.2 billion Hindu, for example, about 1.5 billion Buddhists, and 1.6 billion Christians. And in point of fact, from a religious point of view, they're all right. But that doesn't mean that they should go out and kill one another because it's their way or the highway. I don't care what the person in the next house worships or how they pray, how they reach the psychic realities of their life that make their life meaningful. And that's part of the point that Dr. Jung was making in his book, Answer to Joe. So that's a short 15 minutes to begin this series of discussions on the work of C.G. Jung and how it applies to our politics today. And I'll be continuing to do these presentations over the next few years, perhaps. And let's see how it goes. I hope you find it interesting and amusing. And